Hello good people of YouTube and welcome to my hobby channel and this video, which has ended up being a dwarf bonanza. Unfortunately I haven't had time to cover everything that I wanted to show you in this video, but it's a start. And in this video the dwarves that I concentrate on are the Games Workshop Warhammer The Old World dwarf miners, some dwarf infantry from Oathmark, some Mantic ironclad dwarves from Kings of War, and the Stone Realm arquebusiers from FireForge Games. And when I've built those dwarves, I do a quick scale comparison at the end and take you on a whistle-stop tour through some of the other dwarves which will feature in my future videos. Right, hopefully you can see okay, and I'll try and avoid glare. So I haven't yet taken the plunge and bought the battalion or battle box. Don't really like the plastic models enough, although I love the gyrocopter and the gyro bomber, so I'm hesitating about that. But I do love the dwarf miners and the miners cart, and you get 4 of these in this box and a unit of 24 dwarf miners. So I've always liked these models, so I decided to get these. And that's why I'm unboxing this and not a battalion box. Bag of bases. Four sprues, all identical. A set of instructions. Some dwarf transfers. And 4 50 by 75mm bases. Just take a quick look at the sprue. As I said, there are 4 of these. You've got the bits you need for the miner's cart on this side, the weapon arms, and on the other side you've got some command bits and pieces. And 5 bodies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 heads. 5 bodies and 7 heads, so there's a chance for some variation there. So we'll just take a look at some of these heads in detail. Candle encrusted helmets on most of them. Some more heavily encrusted than others. And then we've got 2 bodies there. And 3 bodies there. Now that looks like an imprisoned goblin. A couple of banner tops. Standard bearer's arm potentially. Dwarf dynamite perhaps. And then we've got the dwarf hammer and pickaxe type of weapons there. And then there's lots of extra bits. I was going to say that's a lantern, but that might actually... Yes, it is. That's a candle in there. So there's a lantern with a candle inside. Pointing arm. More dynamite, more lamps. Particularly excited about stuff like this. The dwarven wheelbarrows. I think that's a drill. I have a feeling it sits on top of the pony. I might dispense with some of that and just be a bit more conventional in how I put this together, but that is one of my favourite models, and to have 4 of them is brilliant. Various bits of equipment to go around, belts, so tankards, pouches, candles. Backpack there, oops, and this thing here, some kind of barrel of something there, and a monkey wrench. So as I said, 4 sprues packed with lots of lovely stuff, 5 dwarves on each to build. I'll build a couple of the dwarves and I'll put together a cart pony, and then we can do some scale comparisons with some of the other boxes that I've got. Right, I've just taken a quick look at the instructions. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the drill mounted on the back there. I would rather have something else, like a treasure chest or some candles or something stuck on the back of my ponies, or even just a bag of supplies, a beer barrel, anything like that. So I love the mine cart and I love the pony, but I don't like the drill. See if I can get a bit closer there, trim off some of those. Yep. So clean up the detachment scars. Now, I just clipped across with these wheels because it was awkward to get into, but now that's off the sprue, I can remove that. Clean that up with a scalpel. Missed that one there. Right, that's a good fit. And that will glue around that when you bring the two halves together. Just doing a dry fit first. Now I've just taken a look at the drill here, and I was thinking about cutting the drill off the tripod because the whole thing is kind of fused there. But I've just noticed that you can just glue the tripod to the back of the drill, so I'm sure this is intentional and may be relevant for a previous edition. So, but if I just glue those on there, I've got four drills, sorry, that are aiming at the ground. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'll clean this one up. I'll do this example. I mean, it could even be used as a unit filler. So I'll get some glue. On there. And there's the drill. We'll take a look at that again in a minute. In the meantime, I'm just going to glue this. I'm just going to glue this together now. Put a little on there as well. Right, I hope this is going to work, because there was a knock at the door and it was the postman, and there's nothing like an incomplete eBay purchase to ruin the morning. And of course the glue dried on this, so I've had to apply it again. So yes, instead of doing this video, I've been messaging an eBay seller. Right, so that's glued together. That's hollow for you to put things in. I might actually have a go at sculpting some different loads to fit that, so I can just drop them in as a single piece, which would be good fun. But there is the cart pony and the drill pointing to the ground. So I'll just clip off a couple of the dwarfs, two bodies, So these 5 heads here have arms on, which suggests they're kind of rank and file. Snip those off, and I'll pick some weapons in a second. Clean off the feet. On both of these. And also make sure that the detachment scar on the back is clean as well. Right, this lovely one here has the candle on, which I think will be good fun to paint, and it's an opportunity to actually do some object lighting on the unit, which could be quite interesting. I haven't done much of that. It's a good fit there for that body. Front and back, very similar to what Mantic do, and we'll have a look at some Mantic dwarves in a second. But there again, front and back. So I'm going to quickly glue those two together and then put the weapon arms on. So a bit of glue on there. So I'm going to put a bit more on, because I want the plastic to melt really well. Right, so a little bit of glue on the wrist of that gauntlet there for the hand, and a nice drop of glue in the socket there. Just bring those together. Just leave him there for the time being. Same again on this one. Glue in the socket. And there, bring those together. Glue on the feet. And much easier now they're on a 25mm base. Actually some room to do a bit of detailing as well with some accessories, or maybe even some bits of slate. Paint them silver if these guys are mining for mithril. But there's lots of opportunities to do a bit of storytelling with these bases. Now there's a bit more room around each of the individual models. So there we are. There are 2 dwarf miners. I'm not going to embellish them with anything else at this stage, because I've got some other models that I want to open. And just before I forget, as I did forget, there's a handle here. Let's have the handle there. And when that's dry, I might get in with either another blade or a little emery nail file, flexible one, just to smooth that off. Alternatively, you can smooth it sometimes just by putting a dab of plastic glue on there. It'll just melt it enough for it to disappear. But okay, 1 drill, 2 dwarves. That doesn't want to stand up that way. So, okay, there we are. 1 cart pony with a mining cart. 1 drill that doesn't want to stand up now that cranking handle has been glued to it. It's moved the centre of gravity. Oh, first world problems. And 2 dwarf miners. As I said, I'm not over embellishing them at this stage. We'll just do some scale comparisons in a minute. I'm now going to build some Mantic dwarves, probably. Now, I actually bought this ironclad regiment specifically to do this video. It was wrapped in cellophane, so I've taken that off. With 1, 2, 3, 4 sprues. So 3 sprues are troopers with hand weapons and shields, 5 on each, and a dwarf casualty in the corner, and then another sprue of 5 here. But instead of the dwarf casualty, you have some alternate heads and some bits and pieces with which to make a couple of heroes by the look of it. Oh, there's the spike there for the standard, and then you've got these little shields. So it's more of a totem. Okay, so we'll start with this sprue, which contains the bits and pieces needed for the command. 2 cresty helmets and fierce dwarf heads. We've got various arms here to accept the different weapons. No instructions, so you kind of go by association, I guess, and proximity. A couple of separate torsos there to go on these. 1 cloaked body there, which would probably serve as a good hero. And then you've got these guys, 2 of whom have heads, and another one there with a missing head. And there are 2 spare kind of regular troopers' heads there. So some of these designs I'm familiar with because I've already built some different dwarves from some spare sprues I picked up off a friend. But that is the command sprue. I'm guessing that is a horn there, so that's for your musician. And I'm just wondering, actually, some of these 2-handed weapons might need cutting down if you're going to do hand weapon and shield. And if we look at this sprue, which is the sprue for the troopers, you can see there are 2 bodies there where the weapon and shield on that one and just the shield on that are integrated, so they will clip onto those or glue onto those. You've got 3 spare shields for the 3 remaining troopers there, and then we've got 1, 2, 3 weapon hands and a couple of empty hands. So again, I'm guessing you trim down some of these hammers so that rather than being 2-handed weapons, you cut them down to make a shorter 1-handed weapon. Other nice little features are the war dog. I think there are 3 of those in the box. There's also an orc's head there, which is nice as well. Right, last time I glued these together, the fit wasn't that good, and the pin that is supposed to help was actually in the way, as it is here. So I can't get those to sit comfortably with that pin there. So it's up to you if you choose to do this, but I'm taking that off and cleaning it up so I can get a good contact on both surfaces. I've got the freedom then to position it as I want, and if there are any gaps I'm not happy with, I can use some green stuff or some plastic putty to fill those. Just going to load up with a bit more. Right, I don't know how well you can see that, but there's a bit of a gap or a bit of a step there that's slightly bigger than I would like. But I'm happy with that. So I will just fill that with a bit of green stuff and shape it to blend in with the fabric. But I'll do that when this is dry. And now this one. I'll get the head on first. So I can have that roughly looking over where the shield will be. So I'll put some glue across his knuckles, which will hopefully be enough to hold that in place, like so. See how that compares to the moulded shield position. It's good enough. And then this one I just want at the ready, like so. I'm happy with those. They look good together, so they can dry. But there's a dog. A front heavy dog. And just finally, I want to snip this guy off. I believe this is a wounded dwarf, which is lovely. Can be used as a casualty marker. I think that that's his tongue out there. Let's just get a bit more of that off there. That's better. While I wait for the Mantic dwarves to dry so they don't fall apart while I'm handling them, I thought I'd take a look at the Oathmark dwarf infantry. Now they do dwarf heavy infantry, dwarf infantry and dwarf light infantry. I went for the regular dwarf infantry. Yeah, I picked these. The dwarf light infantry are leather and cloth armoured, and the dwarf heavy infantry are kind of armoured in plate mail from head to toe, more or less. So this is the middle ground, and inside here we get some bases, which are nice. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 identical sprues, each with 5 bodies on. So let's take a closer look. Okay, and the first thing that I noticed when I had a look at these earlier was this lovely standard here with the wild boar on top. There appears to be a smaller boar there. Now I don't know if that's an alternate one that you could cut off and use, probably, or whether it's a helmet crest. I'm not sure, but hey, we're here to kit bash, so it doesn't really matter. So we've got a selection of weapons here. I can see 5 spear arms on the sprue. There are some arrows in a quiver, and then we've got hand weapons down at the bottom. So swords, axes, hammers, that kind of thing. Got some bows as well. So I'm presuming those are the, yeah, those will be the arms drawing the bows, and these sort of tighter ones will be shield arms. And then there are 5 bodies, which at first glance look to be quite chunky. Maybe just the chunkiness that makes them look big. Now that's a City Guard or whatever from Wargames Atlantic. So yeah, they're shorter. We'll see what they look like with heads on, but they're pushing it. They're really... and then we've got an Empire chappie. Okay, he's leaning forward a little, but yeah, that's quite big. An old Bretonian archer. They kind of work. And just very quickly, I just want to see how it measures up to an old Citadel dwarf. Yeah, sort of head and shoulders. It'll be head and shoulders above that, but we can do scale comparisons later. I was just struck by how big boned they seem to be. Let me just show you those before I get carried away. Some of these heads are brilliant. They really are. Some of them look very Disney as well, like grumpy, dopey, sleepy. Loads of character. Really do like those. In fact, there's one there that even looks like a gnome. So yeah, 10 heads there, and then this other head here, as I said, which may be a sort of hero, for which that would be a helmet crest. I think we'll go with grumpy, and then either bashful or sneezy. A couple of shield arms. No major difference in clothing to be careful of. And then 2 weapon arms. We will go with this axe here. That sword there, maybe. Quickly tidy these up again. Same applies. Scrape off the detachment scars. Now the top of the neck is flat there, so that's going to limit how much we can move the head. Kit bashing opportunities are limited anyway, because both Games Workshop and Mantic dwarves pretty much slot into the chest. Maybe a head like that might fit on the odd Mantic body. I'll often do it with a blunt scalpel, so it's not razor sharp or anything. It's enough to just remove that plastic and stop at my skin if I misjudge it. There we go. Okay, right, let's go with this one first. Whoops, so this is the Steadfast Dwarf, standing firm, and we'll give him that head there. Just going to touch the top of the head there with a bit of glue to soften that detachment scar, because I think it's at the front edge of the hairline. But that's a nice looking dwarf actually. Really nice. We'll go with the axe and a shield. Oh, right. There we go. Get the axe on this one. I do like these. Really nice. That is a nice dwarf. Yeah, a dwarf like that could tempt me to go out and buy a whole army of them. Right, okay, now some people prefer to paint their miniatures with the shield off and add those later. And that's perfectly fine, you can do that, but I'm doing a scale comparison here, so I'm trying to show the unpainted miniature to its best advantage, really. Not doing too well there with that. So I think I'm going to need a little bit of glue on the kneecap, maybe, just to hold it. That was a bit fiddly, and I probably did that off camera, but there we are. So there is one dwarf holding fast with an axe. I really like that. That to me is the right blend of fantasy and historical accuracy. That just looks good. So there's one. Next one. This one's leaning forward a little. A bit more attitude to that. As I said, there's a limit to how much flexibility. The only thing I'm not 100% keen on is how thin that beard is. So if I was collecting an army of these, that would be backfilled with green stuff when I've built them. Yeah, that's the only thing I'm not too keen on. But it's easy to remedy. So we'll get this. Arm like that. Let's get the sword arm on. So he's coming at you. Again, yeah, I like the way they go together, like the proportions. That kind of feels good. There. So, 2 Oathmark Dwarfs. And the final box of plastic dwarfs that I was going to look at in this video are the Stone Realm arquebusiers, or arquebusiers, depending on how you like to pronounce it. And these are from FireForge Games, part of their Forgotten World range. And we've got some bases, 25mm round and 20mm square. So yeah, 2 smaller sprues which contain the arms and the guns by the look of it. And then 2 sprues here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Each with 6 dwarf bodies on, and that will be 12. Plus we've got the shields there. And then there's this, which has got 4 sets of legs on. I have a feeling we might be a few torsos short. So it says you can make 12 miniatures from the box, but you've actually got 16 pairs of legs. So either we kit bash, or we green stuff, or if you're into that kind of thing, you can press mold some torsos to make up the spares that you need. But these are interesting. We'll start with this. This is obviously the command sprue. But some of these dwarf heads here are shaven. I think at least one might be a female. But depending on what lore you are into, all dwarfs have beards. And these have a very Empire look about them. And then we've got potentially a pair of arms wielding a brace of pistols there. We've got some different hand weapons, axes. We've got a standard bearer's banner pole and a banner there. Arm clutching a helmet. There also seems to be some kind of telescope there. So you can probably represent an engineer or the like. And we've got some feathers too. Money bags. And I don't know what they are. They look like they might be braided hair to stick on the back of these 2 heads there. So 4 legs, arms and heads, but no torsos on the command sprue. Then if we look at the sprue with the troopers on, the dwarf troopers, basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 torsos, 6 sets of legs. So the positioning and the detailing is slightly different on these than on the command sprue. You've got your shields, various money pouches, some arms there, potentially holding the shields, holding the weapon and the shield in place, or you can have them firing while resting the gun and no shield. So that's what these hands are for here. These are to hold the shields, and we've got a nice selection of heads again, including some which look either like young dwarfs or females. Quite Empire again. I was wondering about doing head swaps with the Oathmark dwarfs, but you've got the ball and socket arrangement for the neck and the shoulders, so with a little bit of trimming or a little bit of green stuff, depending on which you're swapping between, you probably could mix up the heads. We've got 6 down this edge of the sprue and another 7 down the other edge of the sprue. There. And finally, we'll just take a closer look at some of these guns, so you can see the detailing on there. Nice and chunky. Probably good for Empire. I would be tempted to maybe kit bash with some of these weapons if there are any left over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which there won't be. Oh yeah, there will be from, yeah, there might be three left over from doing command. I think I'll just make one of these guys. Quite like that head there, so we'll have that one. Looking at the arm that's holding the shield, and I think I'm going to go with this gun here as being the appropriate match for that. Just clean the bits up again. Remove the detachment scars. There's not much scope for repositioning of these because they're not exactly circular. So you're going to end up with funny things happening around the waist if you don't glue the sort of point of the belly up against the point of the belt buckle. So, and then this, I think on the box art, the shields are actually that way round and they descend below the front of the base. I'm now going to try and get the gun arm on here. I might actually need to glue this one to a base in order to do all this. And I'm not following any instructions, which probably doesn't help. But that's more or less what you want there, like so. So that's good. Just try and do that while I can. Hopefully that's in focus. I can't really see what I'm doing. So there we are. I actually like these dwarves because I think if they were, particularly this one, if this dwarf were to to be allied to a human army, then it would be Estalia. So we would have the Dwarves of Estalia there. I don't know if I want to commit to a 25 or a 20 mil base for this one. Right, I'm just trying to glue the shield in place to lock everything away. And I don't have a base the right depth. I'm just going to let that dry, and then I can find a better way of displaying it. Right, so if we do some scale comparisons, I've got a Warlord infantry on the left hand side there, and he's standing next to an Oathmark dwarf infantry figure. Next to him is an Oathmark human, and next to the Oathmark human is the FireForge Forgotten World Stone Realms arquebusier, and I actually think they are a pretty good fit. That's a Perry pikeman there just behind the dwarf arquebusier there, and on the other side of that Perry miniature there's another Oathmark dwarf infantry next to a Mantic dwarf. Now, before I get onto the Games Workshop miniatures and the miner and so on, and some of the other dwarves I want to show you, I just want to move back to here and basically say that doing this video helped me sort out what my plans are for the different dwarf miniatures that I will be using in my different gaming systems. So if you've seen any of my previous videos, you will know that I've got a lot of historical Wargames miniatures, particularly human armies that are historically accurate, or at least trying to be. So that's things like War of the Roses. I've actually got some Romans that I haven't done anything with yet, but will be in a video shortly. I've got Agincourt and 100 Years War armies as well, and I've got some Crusader armies, all of which are under construction. And none of which are finished, but it's part of an ongoing project, which is a bit of a slow burn. I wanted to field human armies and then add mythical or fantasy elements to those armies. And that was one of the reasons why I was interested to look at both the FireForge dwarves and the Oathmark dwarves. So for me, that's where the cutoff point is. We pan along here and you have a look at the Games Workshop miner on the right hand side, the Mantic shield breaker in the middle, and the Oathmark dwarf on the left. The Oathmark dwarf starts to look a little tall against the Games Workshop dwarf. It's sort of standing head and shoulders above the Games Workshop dwarves. Having said that, I quite like the size and the proportions of the Mantic dwarf next to the Games Workshop dwarf miner. So that's the point where I kind of see the divide. So for my historical war games, where I'm introducing an element of fantasy, then it's definitely Oathmark and FireForge Forgotten World dwarves all the way. What I will do though is just stand the Games Workshop miner up against the FireForge Forgotten World Stone Realms arquebusier or handgunner, so that you can see they're slightly taller, more realistic proportions with the FireForge dwarf, which means for me it doesn't really fit the whole stylized aesthetic of Warhammer The Old World and some of the classic fantasy that we see. Very quickly, I just wanted to show a scale comparison between the Oathmark dwarf and a Reaper Bones dwarf that we've got there on the left hand side. That's in the old white plastic of the original Reaper Bones range, so it's not showing up very well on the camera, and you can see it's much taller and more human in proportion than the Oathmark dwarf. Next to that, we've got a Foundry metal dwarf, which is far more rotund and I think more in keeping with these old Citadel metals than these plastics. There's another Oathmark dwarf there, and this one I'm not sure about. I have a feeling it could be a Ral Partha Europe dwarf. I did pick some up when I was writing my fantasy book, and it may be one of those, but I'm not sure. And again, that is a lot shorter in stature than these plastic dwarves. The FireForge stone realms on the right hand side, and the Oathmark dwarf infantry on the left. So on the left here we've got a plastic human from Wargames Atlantic, part of their classic fantasy guards or town guard, and here are some Mantic dwarves that I've started to do a bit of a kit bash and a conversion on, and we'll look at those more closely in a second. They're lined up against a Bretonnian archer, the old classic one. This one has had a white zenithal prime ready to be repainted, and there's the Citadel dwarf miner there. So if I move our Bretonnian out of the way, you can see they're quite a good fit. Now, I think, if memory serves me correctly, there was a box set in the 1980s that was called something like Prince Ultha's Dragon Slayers or something, and I was trying to catch that vibe with these conversions here. So I've used some of the helmet decor from the Bretonnian knights, and I've stuck those on top of a filed down dwarf helmet with the Mantic dwarfs here, and you can just see where I've filled in across the back the problem I said that I was having earlier with some of the Mantic bodies not fitting the chest or torso properly. There was quite a big step there, and I've just sculpted a little bit of fabric there to reduce that. And I've also backfilled in a few places like round the armpits and things like that, just to make the model look a bit more as though it was cast in metal when it's finally painted. Here's another one where I glued the back as close as I could get to the beginning of the cloak, and that actually opened up the stomach a little, so I've filled that with some green stuff so there isn't a gap there. Struggling with the focus there, so I've lost track. Yeah, I prefer the stance. It's more upright, it's a little bit more menacing. So I will be building a unit of Mantic dwarves and converting them and kit bashing them a little to sort of blend them in with some of the old Citadel aesthetics. Again, here's one that I've given a boar crest on the helmet and just filled in where there was a gap that was rather noticeable. And again, that final one there, I've filled in the gap around the belt and the top of the legs, and stuck a feather in the front of his helmet. Okay, and I'm starting to get really tired now, so I'll try and wind this up with one final lineup of the usual suspects and some unusual ones as well. So on the left we have a painted example of one of the dwarves I sculpted for the Battleforge. That's still available on the Battleforge website, and that is an Imperial dwarf with spear. Now I've put that next to a Mantic dwarf, which obviously I've kit bashed and converted, and that is then next to one of the original Bugman's Dwarf Rangers, second edition, I think that was, released around about the time of third edition Warhammer. So a second edition model that I used to game with when we played third edition Warhammer. Right, and then we'll scoot through the next two Mantic to see another dwarf of mine next to a foundry dwarf, and that has been lined up with a dwarf miner there. In between the dwarf miner and another Mantic dwarf is what I believe is a Ral Partha Europe dwarf, but I could be wrong. Another 2nd edition Bugman's Dwarf Rangers next to an Avatars of War Slayer. And finally, one of my dwarfs next to a Marauder Dwarf Slayer. As always, I've found myself running out of time and running out of energy, so I haven't managed to cover everything that I wanted to cover in a video on dwarves. However, there will be more videos, and I just wanted to give you a quick guided tour of what's out on my hobby desk at the moment. So you will have seen these dwarves here, painted by David Marks. They actually featured in my modelling and painting fantasy figures book. And in a previous video I did show you the one dwarf cavalry of mine that I'd sculpted and painted. Moving across to the other side of the table, I've got some dwarf cavalry here, which I've now zenithal primed, ready to be painted. These are my sculpts along with the American Civil War dwarves that I've got in a unit along the back there. Now this is part of a hobby project of mine which I'm doing. The dwarves are available from the Battleforge website, but I've been doing some converting and tweaking to get the additional models that I need. I'm currently scratch building a cannon with limber, and I'm using my original pack horses to create the dwarf pony team there to pull that limber. And then I've got some of my fantasy carts and fantasy pack horses there as part of the wagon train. Over here I've converted one of the Imperial Dwarf cavalry riders into a dwarf American Civil War general. So the ones in front of me here I can paint up like Union troops, and the next batch of American Civil War dwarves, when they arrive, can be painted up as Confederates. And again, I will scratch build, kit bash, whatever, another limber. I'm also looking at using some of my what were originally going to be halfling war balloons as spotter balloons for my American Civil War themed dwarf armies. Before I wrap things up, I did want to showcase these painted American Civil War dwarfs. These were painted by Mark Dixon, probably 15 years ago now. At the time I only had these 4 dwarfs sculpted, and this is why Mark only painted these for me. Since then I went on to sculpt the American Civil War dwarf thunderers, if you like, and I need to knuckle down and paint that unit there, which has been primed. So yeah, they were painted 15 years ago, the models were sculpted nearly 20 years ago, and I'm only just finding the time to give them the TLC that they deserved. Also got some other dwarves that were given to me when I was writing my modelling and painting fantasy figures book. I didn't manage to do anything with those. Editorial constraints meant that these didn't get used, so I will be using these, including these 2 lovely dwarf pirates, which at the time were not released. They probably have been now, because this is going back 6 or 8 years, if not longer. Final thing that I want to look at in a future video, a dwarf video, is this Frost Giant Bodyguard from Reaper Minis. This is beautiful. I don't want to open it in this video. I'm going to save that for a video all on its own, where I will open, build and paint this to go with my Warhammer The Old World Dwarf Army. But that is a giant. A dwarf giant, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm looking forward to doing something with that. Anyway, I now have about 3 hours worth of footage to edit down to something that you kind people will be happy to sit and watch. So if you've made it this far through the video, thanks ever so much for watching. I hope you liked it. If you did, please smash that like button. Please subscribe for more videos like this. If you want to leave a comment, that's great. It's always good to hear what you're doing, but please keep those comments kind and respectful. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.